In December 2024, a young man walked up to a healthcare executive outside a Manhattan hotel and shot him dead in broad daylight. And within hours, before anyone even knew his name, half of America was rooting for the killer. On December 4, 2024, Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, was gunned down on a Midtown Manhattan sidewalk as he walked into an investor conference. The shooter vanished into Central Park. And when police released grainy surveillance footage of a hooded suspect, something strange happened. Instead of outrage, the internet erupted in memes. Instead of sympathy for the victim, there were jokes, applause, and people openly saying they understood why someone would do this. If that makes you uncomfortable, good. Because what happened next is one of the most revealing stories about modern America that nobody wants to talk about honestly. If you find yourself thinking about stories like this, the ones that expose something raw and uncomfortable about this country, you're in the right place. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. The man eventually arrested for the killing was Luigi Mangione, 26 years old, Ivy League educated, from a wealthy, prominent Maryland family. He had no criminal record, no history of violence, no obvious motive that fit any profile the FBI or media had ready to deploy. He was, by every conventional measure, someone with everything to live for. And yet, by the time his face hit the news, something extraordinary was happening online. Women were calling him attractive. People were printing t-shirts. Defense funds were being organized by strangers. A man had just been killed, murdered in cold blood in front of witnesses on a public street, and a significant slice of the American public was treating his alleged killer like a folk hero. To understand why, you have to understand what United Healthcare is. It is the largest private health insurer in the United States. It processes hundreds of billions of dollars in premiums every year, and it has one of the highest claim denial rates in the industry. Stories about United Healthcare are everywhere if you look. Cancer patients denied coverage mid-treatment, families fighting for surgeries their doctors deem necessary, people dying in gaps created by paperwork and fine print. Brian Thompson, as CEO, presided over a company that in 2023 reported nearly $22 billion in profit. That context does not justify murder, but it does explain the silence where sympathy should have been. When Mangione was caught in a Pennsylvania McDonald's, investigators found a handwritten note in his belongings. It described the health insurance industry as parasitic and said the people running these companies had it coming. He wasn't incoherent. He wasn't raving. He had constructed, in his own mind, an argument, a cold, calculated grievance dressed up in the language of class warfare and systemic injustice. And the terrifying part is that millions of people, scrolling through their phones that week, read variations of that argument and nodded. That's the story, not just the crime, but the applause. There's a word for what Luigi Mangione became in those first 72 hours, a symbol. And symbols don't have to be right to be powerful. History is full of people who committed acts of violence and were mythologized anyway, because they aimed at something people already hated, because they put a body to a frustration that had no other outlet. America has always had this dark current running through it, the outlaw as hero, the shooter as martyr. Jesse James, Bonnie and Clyde. It's a very old story wearing new clothes. But what makes the Mangione case different is the precision of the target. This wasn't random violence. This wasn't ideological terrorism in the traditional sense. This was one man, allegedly, decided that a specific executive at a specific company represented a specific evil and acting on it. And the public responded not with horror, but with a kind of grim recognition, like we knew it would come to this eventually. The online reaction split almost perfectly along class and generational lines. People who had fought insurance companies, who had watched parents go bankrupt over medical bills, who had been denied mental health coverage or cancer screenings or basic prescriptions, they felt something they didn't fully want to admit. People who worked in finance and healthcare administration and corporate law, they were shaken in a way they found hard to articulate, because you can denounce the violence and still feel the question underneath it. How did we build a system where this is what rage looks like? Mangione's attorneys have entered a not guilty plea. His case is working through the courts. He faces the possibility of the death penalty in New York, where prosecutors have indicated they will pursue federal charges that carry capital punishment. The legal process is grinding forward, as it does, indifferent to the cultural firestorm surrounding it. But the conversation that erupted in December 2024 didn't end when the news cycle moved on. It went underground. It lives in comment sections and group chats, and the quiet conversations people have when they're talking about a medical bill they can't pay. The Mangione case cracked something open, a frustration that had been building for years, maybe decades, and had no legitimate pressure valve. That's the part nobody in power wants to examine too closely, because if you look directly at why a significant portion of the country reacted to a CEO's murder with something closer to relief than grief, you have to ask harder questions about what the health insurance industry actually does, about who profits and who suffers, about what it means when people stop believing the system will ever change through normal means. Luigi Mangione, if he is guilty, made a monstrous choice. Brian Thompson was a human being with a family who did not deserve to die on a sidewalk. None of that is in dispute. But the reaction to his death revealed something that no courtroom verdict will resolve. It revealed how many people in this country feel trapped by debt, by denial letters, by a healthcare system that treats their lives as line items on a balance sheet. The hero worship around Mangione is dangerous. It romanticizes violence. It reduces a complex systemic failure to a single act of revenge. And it lets the actual people responsible for that systemic failure off the hook, because now the story is about a shooter instead of a structure. But the anger that produced that hero worship, that's not going anywhere. It was here before December 2024. It'll be here long after the verdict comes in. America made Luigi Mangione a hero not because Americans love violence, but because millions of them have been quietly drowning in a system that was never designed to save them. And when someone finally aimed a gun at a symbol of that system, the dark, exhausted part of the country that had given up on peaceful solutions exhaled. That exhale should terrify every person in a position to actually change something, but it probably won't.